Thanks for coming for our backend or programming language panel. I welcome all my guests, and before they introduce themselves, just about myself, I'm Ralf Eggert. I'm the curator for the backend track here, and we're not talking about me, we're talking about the language. So please introduce yourself, pass the mic, and tell us which is the best language and why, and keep it short, please.
Hello, my name is Guus from Weelden. I'm the GDG Golang meetup leader here in Hamburg. For me, at least, Go is the best programming language. I'm doing it something like 6 years. And yeah, it's pretty good for microservices. I built a real-time builder in there. Everything which is infrastructure-driven should be written in Go, so there's no other competitor.
Okay, that's it. Let's go home.
Hi, my name is Björn Wendland. I'm a full-stack developer for Metronome. I'm working since half a year professional with Kotlin. Started working with Kotlin 1.5 years ago, roughly, in my free time. And I think it's just the next step after Java, and is the backend language to go.
Better than Go, apparently, more fans. My name is Lutz Hühnken. I work for InnoQ as a consultant, and I used to be a Java developer I'm a Sun certified Java developer from 1998 or so, Java 1.2. But then after 15 years of Java development, like 6 years ago, I fell in love with Scala. So I'm going to argue for Scala. I'm going to give you 3 good reasons to use Scala for backend development. First, it gives you the best of both worlds. You can do object-oriented programming and functional programming, so you don't have to decide. If you choose Java, Scala? If you choose Scala, you can do both. You're on the JVM, so you have the whole JVM ecosystem to your avail. You can use, you can interoperate with all Java libraries. And thirdly, interesting stuff happens in the Scala community. Innovative things are developed there. Spark is written in Scala, Kafka is written in Scala, so it's where things are happening.
Welcome. My name is Lars Kneschke, and I'm the head of department for software development at Check24 here in Hamburg. And we use PHP because we are many. We are much more than the other developers, and what other people can do in less time, we can do with much more manpower. And so we don't care about microseconds. We just do it, and we are the language which happened and which is still there. And I prefer PHP because I never learned another language. And in my role as head of department, I can only talk about PHP. And because of that, we do only PHP here in Hamburg. Of course, Check24 is a big company, and there are also Java developers or C# developers. We have also Kotlin developers. And we also have JavaScript developers. What is good about JavaScript?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you in a second. Short intro, I'm Markus. I'm a senior R&D engineer working at Nordic Semiconductor in Trondheim in Norway. So all the Norwegians here, hello. I brought popcorn because I can sit back and relax. JavaScript runs everywhere. That's why it's the best language. I don't have to learn any other language. I can write any code I want. And I also don't care too much about performance or memory safety. or type safety, right? I just get stuff done, write one language, run it on microcontrollers, on servers, in browsers, on your phone, on your fridge, on your airplane, wherever you want.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So we have 5 best languages here, I guess, from the introduction. So talk about the bad points. What is Go still missing?
It's not really missing, but if you're doing really big projects in Go, you're running into the issue that you maybe want to have something like, oh yeah, it's any Go developers here? Close your eyes. Close your eyes. In some cases, you may need something like generics. When we're looking at the code base of Kubernetes, which is one of the biggest Go projects so far, they're doing a bunch of code generation, having really complex code templates to fulfill their requirements, and there could be something like generics helpful, which we doesn't have. So that is maybe a bad point or missing point in that language. But maybe then when you're doing having such requirements, then you not choose the best language for your problem. So yeah, there are no other bad points that Go. It's type safety, it's compiled, it's fast. It's they're becoming more developers, more and more. Oh no, here over here I saw some raising hands. Oh, there's Dave. Dave is a good debugger so far. So yeah, but the whole tooling system is pretty good. Yeah, debugging was log.printf is a good debugging technique in Go. So and works pretty fine. You don't have to if it compiles it once, so you don't need to debug your code. So it's fine.
Yeah, regarding Kotlin, Kotlin is a programming language from programmers for programmers. So basically, feature-wise, there are no bad features. There's just this one problem. Kotlin is a very young language, so there's very little Kotlin programmers out there that are looking for a job. So is there any Kotlin programmer looking for a job? Yeah, so as you see, so there's no Kotlin programmer without a job. So that's Kotlin's one big issue.
Scala is a very flexible language that gives you a lot of freedom, and that means it's not always easy to read other people's Scala code. People define their own operators and make weird libraries and stuff. So it has this reputation of being a bit difficult, and I guess it is. You have to be patient and sort of willing to learn. It's still a great language, right? And the tooling, I think so it's not the fastest compiler. I don't know. There's definitely room for improvement with Scala, but it's still being developed. Right, next year there's going to be Scala 3, which is supposed to have a lot of improvements and a yet more powerful type system, as if that had been a problem. But yeah, no, there are points that could be improved. Definitely, yeah.
There are also things where PHP can be better. If I ask the PHP developers here in the room, I guess some will agree that something can be done better. I guess what is where's the most room for improvement is the tooling at all. PHP got more and more professional in the last years. If you look back 10 years or 15 years, it was a very complicated development process, but today we have PHP Storm, we have Vagrant, we have Composer, so PHP is moving forward very good, but all these tools are from different vendors. You have to, most of the time, to plug together your own development environment, and I guess that's something which can be done much better is the development process. So how do I debug something? If something tries to set up Xdebug and you get so many complaints that nobody is able to get it up and running. But thanks to Waker and such tools, we are able to do it once for our developers, and then everything is okay. Another thing which is bad and good at the same time is it's very easy for PHP developers to write ugly code and to write code where the people on the other side of this room it's totally okay that they say this is bad code. But I see more and more people writing better code, and I totally believe in the PHP community that in the next few years we write better code than today, and someday the people on the other side of the room will agree that PHP is a nice language too.
I think the biggest complaint I see is that there is the result is of having too many JavaScript developers is there are too many packages in our main package registry. NPM, it's a fantastic team, and they run the biggest package registry on the planet with, I don't know, 500,000 packages. It's insane, the numbers, which means your JavaScript and application is no longer up to date once you return from your coffee break. Then you have to run npm update again, and you get a dependency update. So this creates, especially when you're coming from a language where you have big players advocating or creating frameworks and standard libraries and frameworks like in PHP Zend, or these examples which have a lot of functionality which is very similar or has the same design, API design, and you get locked versions and nice versioning. And then you go into JavaScript and everything is a mess. And the only way is to embrace it and fall forward. You have to have a continuous integration, continuous deployment strategy if you want to run JavaScript in production. Otherwise, that's the only way to go. So, and if you're not up to that task, then it will be a challenge. But we have great tooling for that. So, but that may be the biggest thing I can think of right now.
Okay, thanks. So what do you think? Where will your language be in 5 years, and will it still be there? As a second question, second part.
Or just said you.
I don't know. Maybe you. No, and 5 years for a language is actually not that much time, right? It's probably still going to be Scala 3 or 3.5. I think the way the language is being used might change. I don't know what your experience is. My feeling is that we see a kind of a revival of functional programming. I see a lot of interest in functional programming. I think Java added some functional features in Kotlin. I know some Scala people are implementing sort of porting functional Scala libraries to Kotlin, Arrow or something, where you finally get monads as well in Kotlin. And I think that's very interesting. So I think the way the language is being used evolves as well. And if I may, I want to make a remark that it's interesting that we sit here in a way because, well, some people might say it doesn't matter which language you use. In the end, it all compiles to bits anyway, and with any Turing-complete language, you can express or you can solve any problem. I think it does, though, because the way we think about problems is also shaped by the language, or the way we think is shaped by our language, right? The way we speak. Somebody said, I cannot think what I don't have words for. Right? So in computer languages, the way I solve problems is also shaped by the tools I use. If I look at if I use a functional language, I'm going to approach problems differently. Right? Would you agree? If I see if everything is a function to me, I have to put things in functions. If everything is an object to me, I solve my problem by defining classes and objects. Right? And so I think that matters, and that's also one of the reasons I like Scala, because you can do this functional stuff, and you can actually evolve as a programmer as well. Did that answer the question? So in 5 years, everybody's going to do Scala in a functional way, or Haskell maybe.
Yeah, regarding Kotlin, I think it will definitely be out there in 5 years. And I think the market share will just grow. And we're seeing this, for instance, this year at KotlinConf, they announced, or they introduced to Kotlin native. So might be in 5 years that we're actually independent from the Java JVM. So that might be a step away from that. We would lose a lot in our ecosystem, but maybe the ecosystem itself would grow. Maybe we can keep compatibility and still move away, for instance, for small devices like mobile devices, because that market is like exploding. And Kotlin is already strong in this market, so and I think it will stay strong in this market, but also establish more and more as a backend language. Regarding tooling, I think Kotlin has one of the greatest toolings ever. Basically, because it's supported by JetBrains and they just make awesome solutions. Still, that also might improve. So we're seeing Kotlin DSLs. So maybe we will actually get a build tool based on Kotlin. So maybe a Maven Gradle 3.0, something like that. Think that will be possible. And I'm definitely excited to see what it will bring to us.
Will we go there out in 5 years? I think definitely yes. Next to Kotlin, we are the second youngest language here on the panel. Go's just 10 years old right now, and it got adopted more and more from big enterprises. The Microsoft Azure team building a bunch of tools with Go. Google for sure, Red Hat adopted it more and more, especially for the whole infrastructure world. So there will be no replacement. Really big infrastructure projects are now written in Go. And we are just announced with the Go 1.11 release module support, which is pretty important for big companies for rendering, versioning, etc. And that's just the beginning. So I think that whole ecosystem in Go will raise and become more enterprise, and then other companies will adopt Go as well, especially for infrastructure tools and microservice solutions. So yeah, I think we're becoming more enterprise. Which is maybe not the best way for the best thing for some Go developers, but to bring Go more and more to the community and getting more developers, that's a good step for us. And yeah, then maybe there will be a Go 2.0 out there. It's already discussed in the community, which will be not support. There's some kind of already discussions about a generic-like system. So yeah, I'm really pretty thrilled with which will come in the next years there. But Go will be out there for the next years. I think it will be replacing something like C in the near future.
I'm pretty sure that PHP will be there, still be there in 5 years. And it's quite easy because we are many. And we are producing so much code which has to be maintained also in the future. And there's no way to go without PHP in the future. I'm pretty sure that PHP developers has to change. So the single developer, if you look back 10 years ago, we have built PHP web we have built the HTML on the server. We have created a whole HTML DOM and transferred it to the client. And I'm pretty sure that this is not the way to go for the future. We have our friendly neighbor JavaScript, who can do so much in the browser and gives the user a much better feedback than we can do it as PHP developers. But if you think about APIs, if you think about access to other database systems, if you have a look at the frameworks, I'm pretty sure that PHP will be there. And I hope that we still get more professional, that we write better code. But I said it already, and I'm pretty sure you will follow me.
For me, one of the really why JavaScript appeals to me so much is also the community, and I see that especially JavaScript is such an easily approachable language, and the amount of work that goes into making our community more diverse, and maybe next year or in 5 years we're not having 5 white dudes sitting in front of here. That is something I trust that, especially in the JavaScript community, this will happen. That's why I love it so much. And that's an important factor, what also drives the development of the language and making the tooling easier. And one of the big headaches you might know is that you have like 700 megabytes of Babel transpiler lying around in your project folder because nobody's writing JavaScript today. You're writing JavaScript, yes, but the JavaScript that's getting executed right now is not the JavaScript that you type in your editor. So you have a lot of tooling right now to run it in the end. And one development I see is that this is going to go away because Node.js has now a very well-structured improvement process, which gives us long-term support releases every 2 years. So every major version, like 10 is now going into LTS support. And they bring a lot of new features which will enable us to write vanilla JavaScript and run that code without transpilation. And that will be a much more enjoyable developer experience. That's the one path. The other path is that Ryan Dahl introduced this year, one of the project leads in Node.js back until 2012, introduced Deno, which takes TypeScript and makes TypeScript the main language there by default. And he removes this whole package management system under the hood and uses something that is very much inspired by Go, that you can reference your dependencies using URLs and they will be resolved. That means we might have a really awesome typed scripting language with very awesome and low footprint dependency management. The NPM team is currently hiring 7 more engineers. It's basically they're doubling their number of engineers. Don't look that up. This might not be right, but 7. They are adding 7 people this year, and there are already a lot of projects going on there to improve dependency resolution and tackle all the hurdles we have there. So I'm really excited for the next 5 years.
Okay, thanks. The next question is two-parted. Does your language scale, both in technical sense and, more important, how about a team? Can you scale programming teams? Who wants to start?
I can always have the last word. That would be unfair. So, yes, definitely it scales. It scales very, very much. Right now, the code I'm writing, I write for a cloud-native application, and my code gets executed by a tiny container. And JavaScript is very, very great at running with very few resources. It's not like a binary that Go produces, which is obviously better, but the size we need for the virtual machine to execute Node is so small that we can spin up, AWS spins up your container in roughly 150 milliseconds, and then you have your execution environment. So it scales, yes. It runs on the cloud. All the cloud providers, the major cloud providers, give you operating or execution environments for JavaScript. The other part is the team question, and that's what I like. That's why I think it's a very, very interesting idea for a company to go JavaScript full stack, because once you, as a company, have one language, then you can share the knowledge of your engineers so much better between the different tasks. You can easily switch. Engineers between backend and front-end tasks if you have resource constraints or issues, and you reduce one big task in the company, and it's always tooling. It's all about like, what are our coding standards? What tooling do we use for continuous integration testing, whatever. You can share all this information. You get that information easier, like moved or shared within your company. So this is, I think that's one of the big advantages for just going pure JavaScript.
Does PHP scale? I don't know. I don't think that PHP scales well, but I think that a web stack scales well, which is using PHP. So if you think about Nginx, if you think about PHP FPM, I'm pretty sure that PHP is scalable, but I'm pretty sure that a single process of PHP is not very scalable because it's limited to one process, and if you hit the CPU limits, then you're done. It doesn't get better. But it's very easy to parallelize things. You can split up tasks. You can start more FPM, PHP processes. You can do things asynchronous. So there are things to make a PHP application scalable. Do the team scale? I'm pretty sure, yes. It's very easy to scale PHP teams. If I have a look at my company, we are a big PHP company beside other languages. And so from my point of view, it's easy. And there's nothing to add.
From a technical view, does Go scale? Yes, it's all about scaling in Go. It's initialized by the GCP, the Google Cloud Platform team. They need a tool for writing scalable solutions because of the dynamic infrastructure they're hosting. So yeah, we're having concepts like Go routines, which are green sweats, so not really processes, but really lightweight sweats, which you can easily spawn. You can have channels to communicate between those routines. So it's all about scaling in Go. So yeah, from a technical view, Go scales pretty well. From the team aspect, it's a little bit more complicated. We just realized there are not so many Go developers out here right now. But at my ex-company, we migrated our PHP stack to Go because of the performance and the scalability from a technical view. But we also onboarded our PHP developers to Go developers, and the onboarding process was pretty fast. They adopted Go pretty fast because it's a really easy language with a really small standard library, but also powerful standard library, and you're having regressions and tools which force you to write Go code in every time the same way. So there are not different kinds of implementation. You are forced to do it in one way in Go. So I think also Go teams scale pretty good. So Go is a pretty scalable language in that case.
Yeah, for Kotlin, we see it used technically on small devices, so less powerful devices like phones. We see it in large enterprise solutions. We are using it ourselves in a microservice environment, and we basically can scale up to any point. And I don't see any limitations there. I would say, though, that we're running on the JVM, and we know that the JVM brings some weight with it. So to scale it down, there is this limitation of the JVM, which we have to admit. In terms of how does it scale with people, currently I'm in the first vertical at Metronome to use Kotlin, and we already see it catching on other teams. People are interested, so I would say that to get people onboarded on it, to get them interested in it, is really easy, and it scales really well to get new people on it, and also the resonance here is really good. But then on the other hand, we also see that it is a challenge to onboard new people, because Kotlin brings its own idiomatic code, and converting Java to Kotlin is really easy because you can do that automatically, and that gives you a good start. But to actually get familiar with the language, it takes time. So it scales, but it also needs its time to scale.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. That's I think in terms of scalability, it's the same as Kotlin. It's on the JVM, so and every Java developer is like a half Scala developer already. So it's you can scale, you can find people to do it, and there are companies with big workforces that use Scala. So obviously it is possible. And note, you might not know this, Scala is short for scalable language. So there you go.
Okay, thanks. Who should learn your language? If someone starts its development career, or should they learn other language first? So what would you say? Who would you recommend to start to learn your language?
Yeah, very good question. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if I would say Scala is a great first language. I think I would recommend something slightly more lightweight, like Python or maybe even Go or so. If you're a Java developer, so I think if you come from the Java world, Kotlin and Scala sort of make immediate sense. It's just they sort of look at Java and said, we're going to get rid of some stuff, we're going to improve some stuff, and we're going to make a better Java, and a much better Java in a way. So if you're a Java developer, you should definitely learn, I would say Scala, you're probably going to say Kotlin, so you should definitely look at other JVM languages, let's put it that way. And if you're interested in functional programming, anybody who wants to do functional programming but has trouble finding a Haskell job, you can always come to the Scala community and do Scala instead. Yeah, so if you want to do functional programming, if you're a Java programmer, do some Scala.
Yes, so mostly I have to agree with you. As also on the functional types, but Kotlin is not a functional language. It has some functional features, so if you want to have a look at that, to maybe see, is that interesting for me? Do I like it? That might be something to have a quick look at, and then migrate to something that's actually Haskell. In terms of entry level, I would not say that Kotlin is entry level. So before you start working with Kotlin, get familiar with the JVM, start actually with Java, or some language like JavaScript that does not put so many constraints on you. So you can basically focus on actually coding and not constraints that the language puts on you, like type safety, stuff like that. Yeah, that's my answer.
I personally started programming with Pascal, which is also a typed language, a compiled language. And I think it was a great experience because I learned pretty much basics there and the basic concepts of programming, data structures, algorithms. But the downside of Pascal is, or maybe later Delphi, if you're doing object-oriented Pascal, there are no jobs out there. And I think Go has the same benefits. Like you have really to implement your stuff by your own, getting the whole understanding of programming, of data structures, of algorithm, and there are Go jobs out there today. So I think everyone who's starting with programming should have a look into Go to really get the basics. One of the downsides in the JVM world is there are so many big frameworks which out there which you can use, and they're doing so many stuff for you. But I think it's really necessary to understand the basic concepts, and that can you easily implement by your own in Go. So I think Go is a pretty good language for starters, and also a good language for more enterprise developers later on, because you can also implement really complex systems in there with the channel system and the concurrency pattern there. So yeah, but if you're starting programming, Go is a good solution in my case.
If I would start again software developing 25 years ago, I would again start with PHP because PHP is very easy to start with. It's an interpreted languages, so you don't have to compile it before. It's get really messy if you mix HTML with PHP, but it makes it very easy for a beginner to see something. So the Hello World program in PHP is very, very simple, and you don't need much on infrastructure to get something done. It's very easy to rent a web server at a given provider, and you have all you need to go, but not with Go, but with PHP. And I think that's also the problem, because PHP is so easy to start with. Many software developers think that they now are good developers because they mixed HTML with PHP, but that's not good. But I think it's very easy to start with, and if you like to become a good software developer, you can do it later. But Hello World is very easy to start with. And what is a good scenario to start with PHP if you're interested in web development? There's a big community, there are many good frameworks. You can learn so much by just using some of these frameworks. And so if you like to become a web developer, PHP is good for you. And maybe the same is also true for JavaScript.
Definitely. I volunteer for a charity in Germany called code.talks. There we teach refugees coding skills. And we do this by teaching them JavaScript and HTML and CSS. And also they are split up between front-end and back-end developers. And the back-end developers also learn JavaScript or Node and some Python. And I'd say that the most important part is that you, in order to learn a language, is that you can really see a concrete application. And many people have, if they see a web page and they can like get stuff shown up on their screen, it's a very concrete example, and they can work towards that. And JavaScript provides a very easy access to that. And I see that refugees I started to work with 2 years ago now have entry-level web engineering jobs in companies after 2 years. So I think JavaScript is a great language to start learning, because you can run it in a browser. I don't even need a server. Yeah? So there's platforms like CodePen where you can run everything in the browser. Nothing needed more than that.
Okay, talk about best language. Now let's talk about the worst language. Please, no insults, no weapons. You don't need to stick to the language which are represented here. We have some others around, I guess. So what, from your point of the programming language leader, I think you all think you're a leader, who's the loser?
Yeah, it's a pretty difficult question. I think they're pretty good. Yeah, I like those guys here. This JVM and World isn't that bad. I think I will have a look in Kotlin in the near future too. I've earned some money with PHP back in the days, but I really not enjoy it. And I think PHP and also maybe JavaScript is the root of a bunch of really bad code bases. You had the Ruby sign over there too. Ruby is also an interesting topic, and also Python, because I already get confused by the versioning system, so especially Python 2.7 and 3. Whatever. It's always drives me crazy when you have to execute some Python scripts. So I don't know, like the whole interpreted world. So I would blame bad languages. Every interpreted languages are not my favorite languages. But yeah, there are use cases, and it's easy to start with them because you have a really lightweight environment. Yeah, but nah, I would say the PHP JavaScript fraction isn't that likely to me.
Yeah, so my personal favorite is definitely Python, because of one simple reason that I personally dislike a lot, and that's mixing syntax and semantics. Basically, by indenting code, you change it, and that's something I really dislike, and I think that's a bad practice or a bad design decision for a coding language. And then on the other hand, I dislike Swift, because it just uses some established symbols very different than other languages. So most of the languages use the dot to call something, and Swift uses the arrow, which has a very different notation in other languages. And that's also something that I just saw over at a friend when he was writing code in it. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are doing this so different? So that's a language that loses to me, that takes design decisions that just do not basically comply to all the other languages.
I've been trying to think of something else so I don't have to pick one of the ones here, but I just hate PHP so much. I want to say, so I would rather sort of go in a totally, I'd rather switch to a different profession than code PHP, so seriously. But I want to make the, but I do want to make the point, it's not at all because of the way you presented it here. I think that was very likable and very nice. And so actually you made me hate PHP a very little bit less here. So thank you for that.
Dear PHP developers, in 10 minutes we meet with him on the outside. I have no strong opinion about these languages presented here. I personally like you, and I think you made a very good job presenting your language. The language I dislike is Perl. Every time I have to read some Perl code, I'm totally confused because I don't understand why a variable is magically there and what is a $sign. And so that's my language where when I have to read it, I get frustrated and try to find someone who can explain me what is going on in these lines of code. And I like Kotlin. I think it's a language with a strong future, but Scala, I don't know.
So I have written a lot of PHP code in my life, and I worked with Java. I've written Go code, and I would go back to all of these languages if I never have to write C again. So because any language that takes away memory allocation and where I have to manage all this stuff on myself, then these languages I hate. The rest, they get the job done.
I want to add something because Perl is a great keyword, because I started Go. My first professional Go job was to rewrite a Perl code base to Go. So since then, I really hate Perl too. It's really confusing, but there's one other language I had to write in my study time, and it was ABAP. Has any one of you ever write ABAP code? Oh, yeah, that's a real pain. That's the language I really hate. It's driving me crazy. I get nightmares from that. So I hate ABAP.
Okay, thanks. Time is leading. So, are there any quick questions from the audience to the panel?
I actually have two, so decide what you want to ask. First question, would you use your language to build some very complicated responsible system like a banking system or a flight control system? This is the first question. And the second question, since according to TIOBE index, the top popular language in the years is Java, so I guess it would be worth mentioning Java. What do you think waits for Java in 5 or 10 years? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to answer the first question. Yes, definitely. I would, and well, not flight control, but I'd say I have. Java future, I don't know. It's probably going to be around, just like PHP. There are just so many. maybe it's going to look like Kotlin. I think all the Scala, all the Java enhancement things, they just going to incorporate all the Kotlin features into Java. So maybe they're going to merge. I don't know.
Yeah, so actually a banking system I would do. So I'm working in the payments vertical. So we're basically doing that. But a flight control system, maybe not because of the JVM, not because of the language, but the JVM. And Java, I think it will be losing market share. But other than that, it will continue to be strong. So maybe not top 1, but top 5 somewhere.
A bunch of fintech startups using Go right now. So yeah, I would definitely write my banking system also in Go. And there's like number 26 and Monzu who are already using Go really strong in that vertical. Flight system, I think I would choose something like which I really can formally prove that it works. Something like a real functional language, Haskell. We talked before about Haskell, so maybe that's a good choice for there. And I think, yeah, Java will be there in 5 years, but maybe the share split up to Kotlin and Scala as well. So JVM-based languages will become more popular next to Java. And yeah, Go.
JavaScript, yes, financial applications. I have no issue with that. Flight controller. JavaScript is a language that I can easily, or not easily, but I would invest time into compiling it then to something that is more safe.
Undefined is not a function. I wouldn't use PHP to write a flight control system. I don't feel comfortable with that because if an airplane is crashing, someone has died. About banking system, no problem. Money doesn't go away; it's just somewhere else. So. No problem, we can fix that.
Okay, thanks. To finish it up, can we have a little bit applaud for all the attendees? And just a second one, please applaud especially for Go. And
by the way, Go has one big benefit to all these other languages. We have the cutest mascotchen. We're having here some flyers over there, so grab one for the Go days in Berlin. Great Go conference.
Okay, thanks. And now for Kotlin, please. Scala. PHP. And finally, JavaScript. So sorry, new kids on the block. The best applaud was for the old school language. Thanks.